First of all, I request Dr. Rajesh Chawla, please come to the podium. Dr. Rajesh Chawla, he is MD, FCCM, FCCP, EDIC. At present, he is working in Apollo Hospital in the Sarita Vihar. Dr. Rajesh Chawla is a respiratory medicine specialist with 30 years of experience. He has 25 years of experience in critical care, sleep medicine, and in chest medicine. He has acquired an MD in respiratory disease and is currently working at Inspire Apollo Hospital, New Delhi. One of his special interest lies in bronchitis treatment. He has published non-invasive ventilation book and books on tuberculosis and has written 20 articles in journals. This eminent doctor has also received professional membership in several renowned centers like Fellow American College of Critical Care and Fellow National College of Chest Physicians of India. He was ex-president, Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine. So our learned speaker, Dr. Rajesh Chawla, will give a talk on the current updates in COPD. Dr. Rajesh Chawla, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ashish, for inviting for this gathering in COVID times. So thank you so much. So what I'm going to talk is about a very common disease, not going to talk very complicated stuff, very simple stuff. And what is the current understanding of a very common illness, chronic obstructive lung disease. So I think all of you know, when a person has symptoms, has a risk factor like smoking, air pollution, occupational exposures, and you do a spirometry and you find patient has an obstructive ventilation defect, which does not respond significantly to the bronchodilators with the history, you diagnose it to be a COPD. Basically, I'm going to talk about the COPD Gold Guidelines 2022, which are the latest guideline how to manage COPD with the current evidence. You know, when you do a lung function in these patients, the first thing is if you find a ratio of FEV1 to FVC less than 70%, then only you say the person has a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And based on the severity, if it is less than 80% FEV1, more than 80%, you say it Gold 1. Gold 2 is when it is 50 to 80%, and 30 to 50, you say Gold 3, and less than 30% Gold 4. You know, with time, the PFT, the pulmonary functions or FEV1 decreases, but it decreases in a normal person. It decreases more in smokers. And if a person has COPD, the decrease in the FEV1 is hastened. It is much more. MRC, I think all of the students, they know about the MRC, modified MRC, because this is very important. Nowadays, the treatment is based on the MRC and the CAT. CAT is again assessment, which is based on the quality of life. I'll not go into the details. They're all available. You can categorize the patient and then only you manage these patients. Now, they do not manage patient based on the PFT, not based on the FE1. It is more based on the which category patient is, like A, B, and C, D. If a person has less than 0 or 0 to 1 exacerbation along with MRC 1 or CAT less than 10, he's in A category. Similarly, if his MRC is more than 2 and CAT also more than 10, he is in B category. Similarly, if their exacerbation are more than 2 or more than 1 hospitalization, it is C or D category. So you always do a spirometry. You know, whenever you have a patient of chronic obstructive lung disease, you must do lung functions for diagnosis, assessment of severe airflow limitation, and also the assessment of the reversibility. You know, this is the armamentarium. Every other day, new company you will get a new bronchodilator with new combinations. But there are 4 groups of drugs which are available to manage COPD. One is short-acting beta-2 agonist, that is also called the SABA, which includes the salbutamol or terbutaline. Then you have a long-acting beta-2 agonist, that is called the LABA, which is formoterol, indectrol, vilantrol, salmeterol. All these are available in our country as well. Then among the anticholinergic, short-acting cholinergic muscarinic agent is the ipratropium and oxytropium. Ipratropium is available, and long-acting we have glycopyrronium, tiotropium, and now we have the others are also being made available in our country. And most of the time you use combination of these. Major treatment for any COPD patient remains the bronchodilators. So when you want to treat a patient, your goal is to relieve the symptom and reduce the risk of that patient for disease progression, and he should not get the exacerbation and reduce mortality. So these are your aim, because you can't totally reverse these patients. Some amount of symptoms, some amount of this is going to remain in these patients. So as I said, bronchodilator is the mainstay. You can give as I had given in according to the category of gold, the A, B, C, D, you have to give at least SABA or SAMA in category A. The bronchodilator is the main treatment. If you can give a long-acting antimuscarinic agent, LAMA, along with LABA, and they can also, if the person does not respond or the eosinophils are high and the person is getting exacerbation, you can add steroids. So this is the majorly nowadays, the COPD is treated. I'll talk about one of the new combination which is available, which is once a day. It is a Vilantrone and fluticasone combination. It has very specific beta selectivity, and it has a good pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics. And this is given as a single dose, this combination, and there is good safety profile of this combination. And there is one of the studies which has been published recently, which is called the Salford lung study, where they compare this combination, Vilantrone, fluticasone, along with the usual care in B, C, and D category. And they found there was a rate of moderate to severe exacerbation was less. Patient had to be given only once a day combination. And this was improvement in the COPD related death. Severe exacerbation was less, and time to first moderate to severe exacerbation, there was no significant difference. And there was no increase in the risk of pneumonia in these patients. And there is another trial with a similar finding. So this combination can be given in a B, C, and D category. Then there is a other treatment which is available is the inhaled corticosteroids. And usually they are given in combination either with LABA or LAMA. And in many patients, you give LABA, LAMA, and ICS. Oral glucocorticoid should not be given for a long time. Then a patient is not responding, you can add PDE4 inhibitors like the roflumilast in these patients. The mucoregulators, the regular evidence is the regular treatment with mucolytics such as ardostin, carbocystin, or NAC also reduces the risk of exacerbation. So these drugs are also coming in the treatment of. One of the major change which has occurred in recent is that now the vaccination for COPD, they have increased. In addition to the influenza vaccine, COVID vaccine, and the pneumococcal, you also give the pertussis vaccine and the herpes zoster vaccine. These two vaccines also have been added recently into the vaccination for the COPD patients. Pulmonary rehabilitation should be done, and they should be educated about this illness. Now, many of these patients are also being subjected to what is called the lung volume reduction surgery, particularly people who have an upper lobe emphysema after pulmonary rehabilitation. They are still symptomatic. Their exercise capacity is less. What they do is they excise that upper portion of the lung, and the rest of the lung can take the position, and the lung functions will improve, patient's exercise tolerance will improve, and their symptoms would be less. Similarly, if there's a big bulla, patient can be subjected to surgery, and many of these severe patients, transplantation, lung transplantation is being done, although not that much in our country now, but I think in coming years, a lot of these patients, in addition to ILD, will get lung transplantation. So when to give long-term oxygen, if the PaO2 is less than 55 or the SpO2 on air is less than 88%, you prescribe, or 55 to 60, along with person who has a right heart failure or polycythemia. These are the two clear-cut indication of oxygen therapy. And you maintain the SpO2 above 90%. So initial pharmacotherapy in any patients, we have, as I said, bronchodilators, SABA, SAMA, LABA, LABA, and ICS. These are the 5 major drugs which are available. So if it's a group A category, you give a bronchodilator, you can give SABA, SAMA, but usually the LABA is preferred. Similarly, in group B, you give a LABA or LAMA, and group C, again, LAMA is preferred. But group D category, you give a combination of LABA and LAMA. You can add steroids, particularly, as I said, if person has eosinophils are more than 300 or patient is symptomatic, you can give. But practically speaking, when you have a person of COPD, you always give them a combination to begin with. And most of the times people come to us, they have a severe symptom, or moderate to severe symptoms. You give a combination of LABA and LAMA. And if, and many times patient does not respond, you add steroids also. And there are inhalers which have all the 3 in one inhaler, which can also be given to these patients. If these patients are not responding on LABA, LAMA, and ICS, then you add roflumilast is one of the drug which can be added. And of course, short course of steroids can be given, but you should not give for longer time. The drug which has been very commonly used in our country is methylxanthine. They do have a bronchodilator activity. They do reduce exacerbation, but because of their safety profile all over the world, people have not preferred, but still theophylline are used in our country. Particularly these patients, in spite of all these drugs, they still remain symptomatic, and you add them. Now, the way we are different is we prefer nebulizers. In our country, most of the times, if you find a severe COPD patients, he would be taking a combinations of nebulizer, SABA, SAMA nebulizer, along with a combination of LABA and ICS combination, along with other drugs. So any of these is all right, but I think you should try to categorize the patient and give the minimum possible drugs to ameliorate the symptoms of that patient. All patients, you make sure that they're immunized. You know, influenza, we are giving every year's pneumococcal. You should give to all pneumococcal 23, you should give to all your patients. And if he's above 65, you repeat after 65 years and 5 years. Now there is the indication that vaccination should be given, not only the influenza, pneumococcal, you should give the pertussis vaccine. These are the recent and the zoster vaccine. And of course, the COVID vaccine. So these are the 6 minimum vaccine which should be given to all severe COPD patients, and they are on all the guidelines. This is the one from these are the 4 pertussis vaccine is now in the guidelines also, that it should be given to the COPD patient. Only those patients who have not been vaccinated during childhood. Although if you ask your patient, most of them would not know, and many of them, particularly from villages in the small towns, may not have got vaccine. So this can also be repeated. And if these patients develop exacerbations, then the exacerbation treatment is you give a low flow oxygen. And if they haven't, then you start with a combination of short-acting beta-2 along with the anticholinergic, which is available as a nebulizer. You can give with spacer, and then you can add on to long-acting bronchodilators. You give steroids, either oral steroids or IV steroids. And if person has an indication of non-invasive ventilation, that should be given, like a person who has a acute respiratory acidosis with high carbon dioxide, or a patient has a high respiratory distress, patient has a severe hypoxemia, these patients, if there's no contraindication, you should give non-invasive ventilation. And if person is hemodynamically unstable, cannot protect his airways, these patients should be intubated for at least 2 days and then extubated and put on non-invasive ventilation. That's how in 2021, you manage the exacerbation, because NIV has really changed the life of the patients of a severe acute exacerbation who get hospitalized. And all these patients should be given if their pH is low or they're in respiratory distress, but normally, then the other new thing which is coming is that in patients who have a severe COPD, they can also be prescribed non-invasive ventilation at night at home. And they have shown that if you give this, quality of life improves. And now it is also in the guidelines that you can prescribe non-invasive ventilation at home to these patients who have a severe COPD or getting recurrent admissions because of exacerbation. It will reduce these exacerbation and improve their quality of life and probably improve survival also, in addition to the other thing like oxygen is well known, which improves the survival. So it was just a brief overview. It's a very big topic. So I've given you the current update on the management of COPD. Thank you very much.
Wonderful talk, sir. And you have covered the overview part of COPD management. I think I have few questions. If anyone has any question, this will be welcomed. Otherwise, I'll have some question. And sir is the most experienced person to answer this. So the one question is, so that this spirometry, most of the time it is very, very underutilized by the physicians. And now the COPD guidelines says that we have separated this from the management part. What is your comment on this? Where this spirometry stands now?
Yes, spirometry for diagnosis, you definitely need spirometry and to know which gold category. But from the treatment point of view, if you really see, it is the symptoms, the exacerbation, which really determine and patient doesn't care what is. And many of these patients, you will find when you see spirometry is 30% and he has no symptoms and he doesn't get exacerbation, whether you give him a treatment, it is not going to make much difference. So I think the MRC, what is his MRC? Whether walking 100 steps or walking to the toilet, that will determine that how much medication. And the other thing is the medications have very little effect. It is not that like bronchial asthma, you give bronchodilator and there is a reversibility. These patients will have a very minimal impact. But all these drugs, if you see, they talk about reduces exacerbation. They reduces the entry to the hospital and repeated exacerbation, which require either admissions and some symptom relief is definitely there, because many of these patients have reversibility. And it is not, there is a little overlap in these patients as well. I mean, all of you must be aware. So I think the spirometry must be done, because if it is a totally reversible, you know that what kind of treatment you have to give. And to say COPD, at least the FE1, FEC should be less than 70%. And you can just categorize them to the gold, but management as per the current understanding is based on the MRC and the CAT category, how you should treat them.
Absolutely. I think diagnostic part is very, very important before starting the treatment. And you have mentioned about the reversibility and the variability. So the other important question, and probably the update now, is eosinophil count, on the basis of which we are deciding the treatment, especially the inhaled corticosteroid. Because people are very, very aware about that, whether I really need inhaled corticosteroid. So where is dual bronchodilator and where is triple therapy?
See, if a patient of category D, if patient is not responding and the eosinophil count is more than 300, that is a definite indication that you add steroids to that. But practically speaking, if you see the clinician around, if patient is not responding to the LABA-LAMA combination, they would give him a trial of steroids. That is the usual. They also say in that guidelines, if it is above 100 and patient is getting exacerbation, even there you can add inhaled steroids. But 300 and above, it is definitely. In our country, usually we do not give much importance to eosinophil, whether in asthma or over here. Because now we have biologics which are quite well dependent on the eosinophils.
Excuse me, sir. Just one thing I just want to add. Apart from everything, yes, eosinophil count is very important, and I agree. we are not using it and we are not checking it regularly. Even labs are also not giving us inputs whenever you want. Apart from that, only one small thing which I want to add is, especially when the patient with acute exacerbation of COPD, they come to emergency room. Suddenly the resident whoever is there, if we are not aware, they put the patient on high dose of oxygen, high level, even 10 liters or 12 liters, something like that, which really deteriorates the patient after some time. So one has to be careful. If the patient is very sick, ABG is a must. You see whether patient is in type 2 failure or not, and then accordingly. COPD doesn't need high oxygen concentrations. Even with the 2 liters of oxygen, 2 to 3 liters of oxygen, patient can manage very well. And with oxygen saturation between 88 to 92% is more than enough to manage the patients. But one has to be careful, see, and the judge, because these type of patients, they exhaust very fast. So when there is a respiratory failure, along with that, they get exhausted very fast. So they need, long term of, maybe they need intubation, other things. So early management and intervention is very important. CAPAP is really very good. I agree with sir, very good.
I think I agree with him. I'll tell you, when the non-invasive ventilation was not there, all of you students, that all these patients are dependent on hypoxic drive. So if you try to take over and give high flow, these patients, the hypoxic drive goes down and they collect carbon dioxide. So I remember I would admit patient and I will get a call at night, sir, person is comatose and is getting ventilated. At that time I'm talking with non-invasive. Non-invasive ventilation has taken away this. It allows you to give little more oxygen because you're washing out carbon dioxide. This problem is less nowadays. But even then, you should ask to maintain 88 to 92, because unless you ask your sister to maintain to 88 to 92, even if you give a non-invasive, initially when you give non-invasive, it will be 88. You go around, it will be 100, because once patient is coordinating well, the oxygen requirement goes down. So titrate to oxygen, not titrate to flow, 88 to 92. You just tell your sister whether it's a non-invasive or otherwise, just maintain there. So then this kind of problem would not occur. And all these COPD 88 to 92, hypoxemic respiratory failure, even if you are higher, it doesn't matter.
डॉक्टर चावला, एक क्वेश्चन है मेरा भी। तो जैसे COPD में लाबा और लामा और देयर कॉम्बिनेशन आर द ड्रग ऑफ चॉइस। अब ये ग्लेरमार्क विलोर F लेके आई है, that is Vilantrol and fluticasone propionate as a drug of choice in COPD. What is your opinion?
It is not a drug of choice. It is one of the drug which can, when you have to give steroids, so this is once a day. This is the only advantage of this, that like you give a combination, the whole world gives a combination of budesonide and formoterol to all patients of COPD asthma. So if you are using that, you can choose this as a once a day. That is the only advantage. And it has a safety profile. The action wise, it is more or less the same action.
Sir, I think almost all the part of COPD you have covered very nicely. One important thing for the students is, जैसा अभी सर बोल रहे थे कि COPD का पेशेंट आता है, रात में वो होश में आता है और सुबह बेहोश हो जाता है. It is because of the high oxygen intake. उसका तरीका ये है सर कि I think we put the COPD patient on the nasal cannula. Usually avoid oxygen high flow mask or the mask, full face mask. It is better to put the patient of COPD on the nasal cannula if you require oxygen. Because with the help of nasal cannula, you will not be able to give more than 6 liters of oxygen. So it can be a choice, sir. But one question regarding the COPD, long-term use of azithromycin. Some people are advocating, or there are some guidelines that if you are having a recurrent exacerbations.
See, the only thing is you can give, it will decrease, but the resistance is so high. So all over the world, people are not practicing because they say the person will develop resistance to drugs. So that is one of the caveat. And that's why it has not become popular. 250 milligram OD or something. It is although there in the gold guidelines that this can be given.
Thank you, Dr. Chawla.
Thank you.
आपने COPD का हर पार्ट कवर किया, बहुत ही ब्यूटीफुल. Thank you, Dr. Chawla.